Now on the last, on part 3, last time we worked on these parts, what I did, I put some thin CA around the spots where it looked like we were going to have an issue. Put a little bit of that, what I call red lead, for lack of a better word, nitrous stain. And today, the goal today is to detail out and get as many of these flaws fixed on the parts, and I'll explain some of the things that allow me to do that. We also have waiting in the wings a monumental job of fixing this fairing. There's pieces missing. There's pieces that have to be recreated from scratch. But today we only have a short amount of time, and I wanted to get those side covers perfect and in a perfect coat of prime. Now on part 3 and yesterday we did get to do a valid test of, and I always write who, so I know what primer this job is from. A primer sealer, the Rust-Oleum, and I had used this on the other part. Now, the Duplicolor, there's a giant difference, and here's the difference. That may or may not, both of them are good, but one is better for certain things, one is better for other things. This, I think, is better when you don't have a lot of body work. It's a very thin, it goes on thin, it dries very quickly, sands very quickly. So I'm going to put that one away. The Rust-Oleum primer, which is pretty similar, took pretty much 4 or 5 times the amount of time to dry. I haven't tried to sand it yet, but this, if I was looking at just let parts like I do in the shop now, let parts sit up by the heating vent overnight before I sand them, this would be fine. This does take a lot longer to dry. Now, as long as we're talking about primer, we also have, and I want to just put the can up, self-etching primer when I'm doing steel, aluminum, metal, titanium, anything metal. But I found this on plastic, I didn't like it anyway. Anything that doesn't have the word sealer in it, be very aware of painting plastic. Now, as you can imagine, I have bought a lot of cans of primer. People have bought primer over. I got, this was Sherwin-Williams self-etching primer. I thought this was going to be anti-corrosive. And the only problem is that no matter what I did, the nozzle just kept spitting and spitting and spitting. So I was kind of disappointed in that brand. Duplicolor filler primer. Now what this is for is when you have a job with a lot of Bondo, and we don't have that because we try to minimize the amount of Bondo or eliminate it with CA altogether. But like if you're doing a car where you have big giant areas that are all Bondoed in, this is probably good because it's a high build formula. Again, this was really expensive. This was like 4 times the price of regular primer. I bought this in Gavin's. I tried it. I didn't like it at all. I'm not going to say why. Because it's a lot of work to sand is the reason. This is another one. Now, years ago, Vlad bought 4 cans of this primer. Every one of them, the nozzle was bad. They spit. They were just terrible. Then there's the final thing, and I wanted to mention this. If you have very little body work, or you're just putting a very light coat on, the automotive grade primer is fine. It's also good for another thing, to block out. If you're painting a part that's black and you're going to paint it white, red, or yellow, this blocks out the color uses for a blocker coat. But anyway, for our purposes here today, and again, we really are, because we don't have enough of this to finish the job, so we're going to go with this, and because we have time, the trick with this is if you use this primer, just put the part to dry overnight. Save yourself a lot of aggravation when primer doesn't, when you try to sand it and it comes off like chewing gum, this has to dry a lot longer than Duplicolor. So that was worth spending time yesterday, and it's worth it if I could pass the information on. Now this is a part that we needed a little extra work and sanding on, and again, what I always find is really helpful, since this primer took so long to dry, I put this on last night, knowing that by this sitting up by the heating vent, this will be perfectly cured now. But the point is now I need to get a sanding block or be very careful sanding, because you can actually see the parts where the paint was not the way it should be. Now, there's a lot of ways that, I'll just do one little spot here, because what you're going to see is it's going to stay red right in the spot that was bad. Now, there's only 2 possibilities here. That's the part because these parts have had 2 paint jobs on them, I don't know if that contamination, that's like a little ditch. If that's down in the first paint job, down in the second paint job, but it follows where the trim was. So I tend to think what happened is whoever painted the bike the second time never sealed that edge up real good, didn't wipe his hands, did something that left that little contamination right along the tape line. Now in these areas like this, where I want to get it perfectly flat, I got my hard block. This is just going to take a little extra effort. It adds an extra day to the job, and it adds a lot of effort to do all this block sanding. I want to get all around the edges. I want to get as much of this red filler out as I can, and just leave it in the low spots. It's all 400 sandpaper. And once I get this perfectly level with a block, then I know the next coat of primer will go on here really, really nice. Up. Now whenever he comes with clean clothes, that means he's not going to do any sanding today. Or you play Marble Run and I'll work on
this is awesome.
I'll work on Mark's part.
You and Miles put this together?
Yeah, Miles built it himself.
Holy cow.
Who needs me? Pretty cool, huh?
It's better than cool, yeah.
So when you come to Grandpa Windy's wearing clean clothes, it means I don't want to sand today. I just want to drink coffee.
Miles and his grandpa build.
Now, it was nice to see Glenn. We had a great social visit. Of course, he's one of the charter members of the A-team, so we always enjoy retelling the stories of our grand youth. But anyway, I wanted to get this one piece here, at least this one. Maybe I won't even get the second one done here. The day is drifting away. But if you understand, and it's a hard thing to understand, what the purpose of primer is. The primer is here for 2 reasons. So you can level a surface, which is what I'm doing now with 400 grit sandpaper, wet and dry, and to try to expose the little pinholes and the little things that need the red lead or the putty, the nitrostain, whatever you want to call it. But what it forces you to do is what I'm doing right now, is to sand the whole part and build up a smooth base that the paint, and Mark didn't even buy the paint for this yet, we're doing this ahead of time, trying to get these parts prepped up for him. And on the next video we'll try to attack that fairing. Boy, that fairing looks like it's going to be a lot. Well, everything we do for Mark is a lot of work, but he has a nice collection of bikes, that's for sure. Very cool stuff. Anyway, once you get to this point, this is the key thing, the key part of everything. You've got to get this ready for the next coat of primer, which is, I think we're pretty much ready now. I'll prep all it down. Go outside. I think it's not raining anymore. We'll find out. But you can clearly see, and that's the whole thing, you can see where we had the issues. Now, if these issues, if they come back in the next coat of primer, well, it's going to be a problem. Then we're going to have to sand it down, put some more CA. Maybe I should even put some more CA on this now. I don't know. But anyway, we're going to try giving this one more coat of primer. And if it comes out perfect, we want it to be as perfect as possible. Great, we put it aside and wait for Mark to buy the black paint. Now, it looks like we've got it. But again, if we don't, once that totally dries up, we can repeat all the steps that are on this video over and over and over until we're happy with, we want that final smooth finish. And the primer actually acts as glue to hold the paint onto the part. You don't have that. Listen to that bird. Wow. I guess he likes this primer too. But anything, what I tried to do on this video is pass on all of the tips I know about priming plastic and listening to birds chirp. Now, here's the other part of this that's of some value. While this part is drying, we'll go down and prep up the other part. Now, again, using 400 grit sandpaper, we want to get the parts on this that really need a lot of work are around where we did all the repair work around the bolt holes. The block is good. Do all the initial sanding with a block, a hard block, and then final sand the whole part by hand. And see, what'll happen is all I want the red nitrostain is to be down in the low parts. You don't want to have a lot showing at the end of the job, that's for sure. Let's just see if I can show this. I want that to be as smooth as possible. In fact, I could even get a little more out of there. Now the reality is, every time we sand these parts down, the finish gets nicer and nicer. Every time we dress off these edges, all these little angles that go on the edge. And it really, this is the point of a job where once you get the base nice and flat, nice and smooth, now from this point on, the paintwork, you've really got the odds stacked in your favor that the paintwork is going to be really flawless, of which one of our goals is to have the paint as nice as possible. Now, because this is a really unique bike, not that it would matter, but it pays for me to take a little bit of extra time, because there's not a whole lot of these around. Very few. Luciano's got one and Mark has one. No, I don't think this is one. The Luciano doesn't have one of these. But anyway, these old two-strokes. Who knows who? Maybe I'm the last man on earth that has a two-stroke. I don't know. Again, just things to think about while we're sanding away here. And I want to try to beat the rain. It looks like it's going to rain any minute out there, and get these primed. But every time we work on this and add one step or one sanding or one anything, the parts just get a little bit nicer, a little bit nicer. And that final product, when they're all done, that's what we're looking for be as nice as possible. And the whole idea here is to get light coats on, don't get any runs, no drips, drools. Now, every one of the parts on every one of these 8 restorations that I have out here, every one of them, knowing how to get the prime, especially on the plastic, that it didn't melt, it didn't curdle, and that it would lay flat and make a nice base for the final paint. Such an important thing to have that perfectly flat, smooth base. And from that point on, it almost guarantees you're going to have a real nice paint job. And I'm so happy that I'm able to pass some of this on. I hope it's helped you figure out how to make your life a little bit easier if you're learning how to paint. And if you're already a great painter, share some videos with us on YouTube. I'm always willing to learn and always looking for new tricks. And I've said it a million times, I just think one of the most important things you can do to make a bike custom to you, and make it just as much change as you can do for as little money, is a good paint job. And I always try to encourage people that do have certain skills, and it seems like within our A-team everybody has some unique skill. Now, Glenn was over here today, worked on my television. I can't work on televisions, but I remember when he needed some help painting his motorcycle, we were able to enjoy some good afternoons together. And that's what the A-team is all about. And whether it's painting or polishing or customizing or trying to do something unique or just hanging out together, riding together, and telling lies. That's the main thing. We got to learn how to tell lies about each other. We're getting better at it as time goes by. Anyway, you got to go see how those parts are drying up. You got to get ready for working on that fairing. Whew, that's going to be on the next part of the video, that fairing. And to be honest, this fairing, when I got it, was way worse than the one we're going to work on for Mark. And this one came out nice, and, well, we're just going to have to see. I'm not making any predictions. Okay, now there were some spots on here that I thought could use a second coat of primer. I put the second coat on. It's drying up here. As soon as it kicks off and outgasses, I'll bring it down into the cellar, let it dry inside overnight. But these parts are pretty much ready for the black paint whenever Mark gets the paint. Now, it was only a couple of days ago that these parts were in pretty rough shape when Mark originally brought them over here. There were parts missing, chunks missing, cracks, parts that had to be recreated, parts that had to be fit to other parts, but It's now that it's done, it sounds like it was an easy job. Well, maybe. I'm always happy if I can share some of this information that allows me to do these restorations. And I hope they help you too. And this is what we're going to pick up on the next video. Number 5, we're going to try to take the windshield off, see if we can do anything with the windshield. Pull some of these stickers off. We have to recreate this part from scratch. Pull these stickers off. Get these bolts out, which sometimes can be a problem because they're the Allen head is very small. Have to recreate this part. Want to try to make a pattern for these so we can paint that on the next time. Get rid of the other decals. There's some cracks down here. I know there's some chunks. These bikes have had a rough service life, but you know what? It's really a rewarding thing when you can bring one of these old bikes back to looking brand new. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video and hope I was able to share some useful information about primer. And thanks for watching. We have, as of now, we're coming up on 1,200 videos of motorcycle restoration. And thanks for watching.